The Galactic Assembly Hall floated in the silence of space, a massive structure that orbited the neutral world of Centria Prime. Inside its grand chamber, representatives from 200 alien civilizations gathered under the glow of artificial lights. The air hummed with conversation as beings of countless shapes and sizes discussed the day's agenda. Today, they would decide the fate of humanity. Admiral Jiwon Kim stood near the back of the human delegation section. She was a woman in her 50s with silver streaks running through her black hair. Her uniform was crisp and clean, decorated with medals that told stories of decades of service. But what caught the attention of anyone who looked closely was her expression. While other humans seemed nervous, Admiral Kim wore a small smile that never quite left her face. Beside her stood Ambassador Doyen Park, Earth's chief diplomat. He was a soft-spoken man who had spent the last 5 years navigating the complex politics of the galactic community. Unlike the Admiral, Park showed no emotion at all. His face remained calm and professional as he reviewed notes on his datapad. At the center of the Grand Chamber, High Arbiter Velkan rose from his seat. The leader of the Draxil Empire stood nearly 3 meters tall on his 4 powerful legs. His scales gleamed like polished copper under the lights, and his forearms moved with practiced authority as he gestured to the assembly. The Draxil were the oldest spacefaring civilization in known space, with a history stretching back 12,000 years. When Velkan spoke, other species listened. Honored members of the assembly, Velkan's voice boomed through translation devices. We gather to address a matter of galactic security. The human species has occupied the Sol system for 70 years since joining our community. In that time, they have proven themselves industrious but dangerously naive about the realities of interstellar politics. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Krell representative, a being that looked like a mass of tentacles wrapped in expensive robes, nodded enthusiastically. The Thane delegation, tall humanoids with crystalline skin, whispered among themselves but clearly supported the Draxil position. Velkan continued, his confidence growing with each word. Humanity lacks the military strength to defend its territory. Their fleet consists of perhaps 300 vessels, primitive by galactic standards. Their weapons technology is centuries behind our own. Their understanding of strategic defense is that of children playing with toys they don't understand. Admiral Kim's smile grew slightly wider. She caught Ambassador Park's eye, and he gave her the smallest nod. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Therefore, Velkan declared, the Draxil Empire, with the support of this assembly, offers humanity protection. In exchange for 40% of Earth's industrial output, full mining rights to the asteroid belt, and acceptance of our military administration of Mars, we will ensure that no harm comes to the human species. The chamber erupted in voices. Some species applauded the generous offer. Others debated the specific percentages. A few smaller civilizations argued that 40% seemed harsh. Perhaps 30% would be more reasonable. But not a single voice suggested that humanity could or should refuse. Ambassador Park waited for the noise to die down before he stood. His movement was slow and deliberate, and gradually the chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the human delegation. The people of Earth thank the Assembly for their concern, Park said, his voice quiet but clear. We request 48 hours to consider these terms and formulate our response. The chamber exploded in laughter. It started with a few scattered chuckles but quickly grew into a wave of amusement that washed across the entire hall. Even Velkan's scaled face twisted into what might have been a smile. 48 hours, a Krell representative called out between fits of laughter. Do humans need time to properly spell the word surrender? More laughter followed. The Thane ambassador stood and offered false sympathy. Perhaps we should provide templates for the acceptance documents to help speed the process. Through it all, Ambassador Park remained standing calm and patient. Admiral Kim stayed in her position at the back, her smile never wavering. She checked her wrist device once, noting the time, then returned her attention to the mockery unfolding before them. Finally, Velkan raised one of his 4 arms, and the laughter gradually subsided. Very well, Ambassador Park, the Assembly grants your request. 48 hours. We reconvene in 2 standard days to receive Earth's acceptance of these terms. He paused, then added with barely concealed amusement, do not waste our time with pointless negotiations. These terms are not negotiable. You will accept them, or we will enforce them. The session adjourned amid continued chuckling and self-satisfied conversations. As the various delegations filed out, several aliens approached Park with offers of assistance. The Krell suggested that if humanity provided biological samples from their population, they might negotiate slightly better terms. The Thane hinted that becoming a vassal state directly under their rule would be preferable to Draxel occupation. Ambassador Park thanked each of them politely and made no commitments. Admiral Kim said nothing at all, simply following Park as they made their way through the corridors back to the human embassy section. Once they were alone in a secured conference room, Admiral Kim finally spoke. They actually believe it. After 70 years, they still think we're helpless children. Park nodded, allowing himself a small smile now that they were away from alien eyes. We've played the part well. Too well, perhaps. They've forgotten that species don't survive for hundreds of thousands of years by being helpless. Kim activated her secure communication device. The holographic display showed Fleet Commander Taeyong Lee on Earth's orbital defense platform, high above the planet. Lee was a younger officer, barely 40, but his eyes held the sharpness of someone who had trained for this moment his entire career. Commander Lee, Kim said simply, begin the unveiling protocol. All of them. Every last ship. Lee's face remained neutral, but his eyes gleamed with anticipation. Confirmed, Admiral. Initiating activation sequence across all hidden facilities. Full deployment in 47 hours, 52 minutes. Good, Kim replied. The galaxy thinks they know humanity. It's time we showed them the truth. Park watched the display as Lee began issuing orders to officers throughout the solar system. Do you think they'll believe it even when they see it? Kim considered the question. Probably not. Not at first. They'll think it's a trick, some kind of elaborate deception, but that's fine. Let them think what they want. In 2 days, every species in this galaxy will understand that humanity isn't a young race stumbling into space. We're an old race that came home. She closed the communication link and turned to face Park directly. Get some rest, Ambassador. In 48 hours, you're going to change galactic history. Park nodded and headed toward his quarters, already mentally preparing the speech he would give. Behind him, Admiral Kim stood alone in the conference room, looking out through the transparent wall at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there in the darkness, ancient machinery was waking up after thousands of years of sleep. Ships older than most civilizations were powering their engines and preparing their weapons. The galaxy had demanded humanity's surrender. Instead, they were about to get a history lesson they would never forget. Ambassador Doyen Park sat alone in his quarters aboard the embassy station, surrounded by silence and classified files. The holographic displays floated in the air around him, each one showing documents marked with the highest security clearance. These were files that most humans had never seen, would never see. They contained the truth about humanity's past, and Park needed to understand every detail before he stood before the assembly again. The first file he opened was labeled simply, First Discovery. It was a personal log from Captain Min-Soo Han, recorded 90 years earlier, before humanity had even made first contact with alien species. Captain Han's face appeared in the recording. He looked young, maybe 35, with the eager expression of an explorer seeing something impossible. This is Captain Min-Soo Han of the exploration vessel Horizon Scout. Date, March 15th. Location, Outer Oort Cloud, approximately 1 light-year from Sol. What we've found here doesn't make any sense. The image shifted to show external camera footage. Massive structures floated in the darkness between distant ice chunks. They were clearly artificial, built with purpose and precision. Shipyards, enormous facilities that could construct vessels on a scale that made modern human ships look like toys. We detected the energy signature 3 days ago. Han's voice continued over the footage. Thought it might be an alien probe. Instead, we found this. The structures are old. I mean, really old. Our sensors can't get accurate readings, but preliminary estimates suggest thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands. The camera zoomed in on one of the structures. Through its transparent sections, shapes were visible inside. Ships, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all dormant and dark. Here's the strange part, Han said, and Park could hear the confusion in his voice. The design language is human. Not similar to human. Not inspired by human engineering. Actually human. It's like someone took our current ship designs and evolved them. Forward 1,000 years. But these things were built before we even had spaceflight. Park paused the recording and opened another file. This one was a scientific analysis conducted after Captain Han's initial discovery. Dr. Hee-Jin Choi, a historian and military analyst, had spent 5 years studying the shipyards and their contents. Dr. Choi appeared in her recording, standing in what looked like a research laboratory. Behind her, holographic displays showed detailed scans of the ancient vessels. "We've confirmed what Captain Han suspected," she began. "These ships are human in origin, but they predate modern humanity by approximately 40,000 years. She gestured to one of the displays, which zoomed in on microscopic details of the ship's hull. The construction materials contain isotopes that have specific decay rates. We can date them accurately. The newest vessels in the shipyard are approximately 10,000 years old. The oldest are closer to 40,000 years old." Park felt a chill run down his spine, even though he had read these reports before. 40,000 years. When humans on Earth were still painting on cave walls, their ancestors had been building warships in space. Dr. Choi continued her explanation. "When we first entered the main shipyard, we triggered automated defense systems. They nearly destroyed Captain Han's ship before we managed to broadcast a shutdown code. The interesting thing is, we didn't know any shutdown codes. Our communications officer just transmitted basic human language, explaining we were human explorers. The systems recognized the language patterns and stood down." The recording shifted to show the interior of one of the ancient facilities, a massive chamber filled with technology that still hummed with power after thousands of years. In the center, a holographic entity appeared. It called itself the Archive. "The Archive is an artificial intelligence," Dr. Choi explained. "It was left here to guard these ships and wait for humanity's return. According to its records, ancient humanity was a massive spacefaring empire. We controlled hundreds of star systems and had a population in the trillions." Park stood and walked to the window of his quarters, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity had once ruled vast territories. Then something had gone wrong. He returned to his seat and resumed the recording. Dr. Choi's expression had grown serious. "Approximately 40,000 years ago, ancient humanity fought a war. The Archive won't tell us much about the enemy, only that they were powerful and ruthless. The war lasted for centuries and resulted in catastrophic losses on both sides. Eventually, our ancestors made a decision. They couldn't win, so they chose to hide. The display showed star maps with highlighted systems. Humanity's leadership selected Earth as a refuge world. It was a primitive planet in a backwater region of space, far from major trade routes or areas of strategic importance. Perfect for hiding, they evacuated as many people as they could, destroyed all records of Earth's location, and scattered false trails across the galaxy to confuse their enemies." Park had read this part before, but it still amazed him. The survivors on Earth were given genetic treatments to accelerate their development. They were also given something else, a genetic marker that would trigger recognition by systems like the Archive. Essentially, they made sure that if humanity ever returned to space and found these hidden shipyards, we would be recognized as the descendants of the original empire. Dr. Choi pointed to another display showing the massive warships in storage. "These vessels represent the military might of ancient humanity. Not all of it. The Archive says most of the fleet was destroyed in the final battles, but what remains here is more than enough. The smallest ships are 2 kilometers long. The largest are 10 kilometers. They carry weapon systems we're still trying to understand and power generation technology that makes our fusion reactors look like candles." The recording ended, and Park sat in the darkness for a moment. Then he opened the final file, marked Strategic Protocol. This recording showed multiple people. Dr. Choi was there, along with military commanders and government officials from Earth's united government. The date was 70 years earlier, just after humanity had made first contact with the Draxel Empire. An older man spoke first. Park recognized him as President Jinwoo Kang, Earth's leader at the time. "We've spent 20 years since discovering the Archive preparing for this moment. Now that we've made contact with alien civilizations, we must decide how to proceed." A military officer argued for immediate revelation. "If we show them these ships, they'll never threaten us. We'll be recognized as a major power immediately." But Dr. Choi shook her head. "We don't know the political situation in the galaxy. We don't know if humanity's ancient enemies are still out there. The Archive was programmed with clear instructions. Hide until you're strong enough to reveal yourself safely. or until revealing yourself becomes necessary for survival. President Kang made the final decision. We play weak. We show them primitive ships, outdated technology. We act like newcomers who barely understand space travel. Meanwhile, we modernize the ancient fleet in secret. We study these other species, learn their tactics, understand their weaknesses. When we finally reveal ourselves, it will be on our terms at a time of our choosing. That decision had held for 70 years. Humanity had maintained the perfect illusion. They built obvious shipyards and produced mediocre vessels for everyone to see. Meanwhile, in hidden facilities scattered throughout the solar system, the real work continued. Ancient warships were brought online one by one. Their systems were updated with modern computing. Their weapons were tested in secret. Crews were trained on vessels that had fought wars before Earth's pyramids were built. Park closed the files and checked the time. 32 hours until the assembly reconvened. 32 hours until humanity stopped hiding. His communication device chimed. Admiral Ji-won Kim appeared on the screen. Ambassador, the activation sequence is proceeding ahead of schedule. Commander Taeyong Lee reports all primary vessels are now online. The hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt are fully operational. Mars defense platforms are armed and ready, Park nodded. And the crews? Already aboard, Kim confirmed. Captain Yoonji Nam has taken command of the Eternal Sentinel. That's one of the largest ancient battleships. She reports all systems showing green. The ship is ready for combat operations after 40,000 years in storage. Remarkable, Park said quietly. Kim's expression grew thoughtful. Do you know what the archive told me yesterday? It said that ancient humanity left one final instruction in its database. If we ever found these ships and used them to protect ourselves, we should remember what happened to our ancestors. Power without wisdom led to war. War without mercy led to extinction. It hopes we've learned to be better than they were. Park considered those words carefully. Tomorrow we show the galaxy our power. Let's hope we also show them our wisdom. The communication ended and Park returned to looking out at the stars. 48 hours ago, the galaxy had seen humanity as weak children needing protection. In a few hours they would learn the truth. The children were actually ancient parents and they had come home. The Galactic Assembly Hall was even more crowded than it had been 2 days before. Word had spread that humanity would give their answer today, and representatives from across known space had come to witness what they assumed would be a historic surrender. The air buzzed with conversation and barely suppressed excitement. Many species had already begun discussing how they would divide the benefits of human industrial capacity. High Arbiter Velkan sat in his elevated seat, all 4 arms resting comfortably on the armrests. His expression radiated satisfaction. The Draxel occupation fleet was already assembled at the edge of Draxel space, 2,000 warships ready to enforce the Assembly's will. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Ambassador Doyon Park and Admiral Ji-won Kim entered the chamber together. Unlike their previous appearance, both humans walked with perfect confidence. Park no longer carried his datapad of notes. Kim's dress uniform seemed somehow sharper, more intimidating. Several alien representatives noticed the change in bearing and exchanged confused glances. Velkan called the session to order with a wave of one massive hand. The Assembly recognizes Ambassador Park of Earth. You have had 48 hours to consider our generous offer. What is humanity's response? Park stepped forward to the central speaking platform. His voice was clear and calm. High Arbiter, honored members of the Assembly, Earth has carefully considered your terms. Our answer is simple. We decline. Silence fell across the chamber. Then, like a dam breaking, voices erupted from every direction. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages, though the translation devices made every word understandable. Accusations of insanity, warnings of military action, mockery of human stupidity. Velkan raised all 4 arms for silence. When order was restored, he leaned forward, his scaled face showing genuine confusion. Ambassador Park, perhaps you misunderstand the situation. This is not a negotiation. You cannot simply decline. The Draxel Empire has assembled an occupation force. If you refuse our protection, we will provide it anyway. No, Park said simply. You won't. Admiral Kim stepped forward now, standing beside Park. She activated her wrist device and a massive holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, visible from every seat. The image showed space, darkness dotted with stars. Nothing unusual. Before threats are made, Kim said, her voice carrying authority that made several aliens sit back in their seats. "We should clarify something about human history, specifically where we actually came from." She tapped her device and the image shifted. Now it showed the Oort cloud, that distant region of ice and rock at the edge of the Sol system. But the image focused on something that shouldn't exist there. Massive structures kilometers across lit with millions of lights. "This is the Horizon Shipyard," Kim explained. "One of 7 hidden facilities in human territory. What you're seeing activated 3 days ago for the first time in thousands of years." The image zoomed in, and gasps echoed through the chamber. Inside the shipyard, visible through its transparent sections, were vessels. Warships. Hundreds of them, and each one was enormous, dwarfing anything the modern galaxy had produced. "These ships," Kim continued, "are between 10,000 and 40,000 years old. They were built by ancient humanity, our ancestors, before we fled to Earth and hid from enemies we could not defeat." The Krell representative's tentacles writhed in agitation. "Impossible. Humans have only had spaceflight for 150 years. Modern humans," Park corrected. "But our species is far older than that. We didn't discover space travel 70 years ago. We remembered it. We came home to technology our ancestors left for us." The display shifted again, now showing different locations throughout the Sol system. The asteroid belt lit up with hundreds of defensive platforms, each one bristling with weapons. Mars revealed massive installations built into its surface, camouflaged to look like natural formations but clearly military in nature. Even Earth's moon showed hidden facilities opening like flowers, revealing ship berths and weapon systems. "For 70 years, Kim said, we have maintained the appearance of primitive newcomers. We built obvious shipyards and produced mediocre vessels for you to see and catalog. We acted confused about galactic politics and asked simple questions to which we already knew the answers. We studied you. Every species, every military tactic, every weakness." The numbers began appearing on the display. 1,000 ancient warships online. 5,000. 10,000. The count kept climbing as more hidden facilities revealed themselves across human space. A Thane representative stood, crystalline skin reflecting the holographic light. "Even if these ships exist, they are ancient relics. Modern weapons and tactics would tear them apart." Park smiled slightly. "Would you like to test that theory? We can arrange a demonstration." Velkon's scaled face had lost its confident expression. "You're bluffing. These could be fabricated images, propaganda." Kim tapped her device again. "Then let me introduce someone." The display changed to show a live feed from space. A woman in a military uniform stood on what was clearly a ship's bridge. Behind her, dozens of crew members worked at stations that glowed with active displays. "This is Captain Yunji Nam," Kim announced. "She commands the battleship Eternal Sentinel, one of our ancient vessels. Captain, please show the assembly what your ship is capable of." Captain Nam nodded. Her bridge crew worked quickly, and the exterior cameras activated. The image showed the Eternal Sentinel in full glory. The ship was massive, easily 10 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was dark metal that seemed to absorb light, covered in geometric patterns that served both artistic and functional purposes. Weapons ports lined its surface, hundreds of them, each one larger than most modern ships. "The Sentinel is 40,000 years old," Nam reported. "All systems are operational. Weapons are charged. Engines are online. We are ready for combat operations." The display split to show multiple ships. Ancient dreadnoughts, each one a masterpiece of engineering. Carrier vessels large enough to deploy thousands of fighters. Defense platforms that could sustain fire for hours. And more ships were appearing every second as the count continued to rise. 20,000 vessels. 25,000. 30,000. The assembly sat in stunned silence. The sheer scale of what they were seeing overwhelmed every calculation they had made about human military capacity. Park's voice cut through the silence. "Furthermore, Earth demands the immediate withdrawal of all Draxil military forces from human territorial space. You have 60 standard hours to comply." Velkon's forearms gripped his seat. "This is outrageous. The Draxil Empire will not be threatened by ancient museum pieces. Our occupation fleet will—" "Your occupation fleet," Kim interrupted, "consists of 2,000 ships using technology we studied and found wanting. We know every weapon system you possess. We know every tactical doctrine you practice. We have spent 70 years preparing for exactly this scenario. If your fleet enters human space, it will not leave. A smaller species representative, someone from the Pelvan Confederacy, raised a tentative hand. Admiral Kim, if humanity possessed this level of military power, why hide it? Why pretend to be weak? Kim's expression softened slightly. Because ancient humanity learned a terrible lesson. They had power, possibly more than any species in the galaxy today, but they used it unwisely. They made enemies they couldn't defeat and fought wars that nearly destroyed them. We hid because our ancestors wanted us to grow up differently, to learn patience and wisdom before we revealed our strength. Park stepped forward again. The galaxy judges species by how long they've had spaceflight. You assume older means wiser, stronger, better. But humanity's history spans 40,000 years of space travel. We are not newcomers. We are not children. We are survivors of something that nearly wiped us out, and we have spent that time learning from our mistakes. The display changed one final time, showing Fleet Admiral Sang-Woo Yoon on the bridge of a command vessel. Behind him, tactical displays showed the full deployment of human forces. Yoon spoke directly to the assembly. Humanity does not desire war. We did not reveal ourselves to conquer or dominate. We revealed ourselves because we will not be subjugated. Earth and all human territories are under our protection. Any species that respects our sovereignty will find us generous allies. Any species that threatens us will find us implacable enemies. The transmission ended. The holographic display faded. Ambassador Park and Admiral Kim stood side by side in the center of the chamber, surrounded by 200 alien species who had just watched their understanding of galactic power collapse. Velkan sat motionless, his forearms now gripping the armrests hard enough that the metal creaked. Around the chamber, other representatives began furious consultations with their homeworlds. Emergency communications flew across the galaxy as military commanders and political leaders tried to process what they had just learned. A young species representative, someone from a civilization that had only joined the assembly 10 years earlier, asked the question everyone was thinking. What happens now? Park looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as he could. Now we begin again. Humanity proposes a new framework for galactic relations, one based on mutual respect rather than arbitrary judgments. We have much to offer the galaxy, technologies and knowledge from our ancestors, but we will share it as equals, not subjects. Admiral Kim added one final statement. You came here expecting to witness humanity's surrender. Instead, you've witnessed humanity's return. We suggest everyone adjust their strategic planning accordingly. The session adjourned in chaos. As aliens fled the chamber to contact their homeworlds, Park and Kim walked calmly back to their embassy quarters. Behind them, the galaxy was already changing, adapting to a new reality where humanity was not weak newcomers but ancient survivors finally ready to stand in the light. Supreme Commander, Vorthak of the Draxel Occupation Fleet was not a being who accepted humiliation easily. When High Arbiter Velkan transmitted the recording of humanity's revelation to the assembly, Vorthak watched it 3 times. Each viewing only increased his anger. Ancient ships meant nothing. Old technology was still old, no matter how impressive it looked. The galaxy had evolved, tactics had improved, and modern warfare would tear these museum pieces apart. They're bluffing, he told his senior officers on the bridge of his flagship. The dominance. Humans are clever with their tricks and propaganda, but we have 2,000 ships with modern weapons and trained crews. They're hoping we'll retreat without testing their strength. His tactical officer, a younger Draxil named Kess, hesitated before speaking. Commander, the sensor readings from their revealed facilities suggest genuine power signatures. The energy outputs match or exceed our projections for vessels of that size. Vorthak silenced him with a gesture of 2 arms. Sensor readings can be faked. What cannot be faked is combat experience. These humans have been in space for 70 years. 70? My family has been serving in the Draxil fleet for 3,000 years. Experience wins wars, not the size of your ships. The fleet began moving toward human space. 2,000 vessels arranged in standard Draxil battle formations that had proven effective for millennia. Vorthak was confident. Even if the humans had somehow acquired or built these ancient vessels, they couldn't possibly know how to use them properly. Combat wasn't just about having weapons, it was about coordination. Timing, tactical awareness built up over countless battles. 3 days later, the Draxil fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system, near Neptune's orbit. Vorthak expected to find scattered human forces, maybe a few dozen ships trying to make a brave show of resistance. Instead, his sensors immediately detected something that made him pause. 4,000 warships waited in perfect formation. Fleet Admiral Sang-Woo Yoon stood on the bridge of his command vessel, the Phoenix Dawn. It was not one of the ancient ships. Yoon preferred commanding from a modern vessel with systems he had trained on for decades. But around his flagship, the ancient fleet waited like sleeping giants finally awakened. Draxil fleet has entered scanner range, reported his tactical officer. They're maintaining standard approach formation. 2,000 vessels, mostly cruiser class with destroyer escorts. Flagship identified as the Dominant's Supreme Commander Vorthak commanding. Yoon nodded calmly. He had studied Draxil tactics for 30 years, ever since joining the military. He knew exactly how Vorthak would approach this situation. The Draxil believed in overwhelming force applied directly. Subtle tactics were considered cowardly in their military culture. Open a channel, Yoon ordered. Vorthak's scaled face appeared on the display. His forearms were spread in a gesture meant to convey dominance. Human Commander, I am Supreme Commander Vorthak of the Draxil Empire. You are blocking our rightful passage to occupy Mars and enforce the Assembly's protection of your primitive species. Stand aside or be removed. Yoon allowed himself a small smile. Supreme Commander, I am Fleet Admiral Sang-Woo Yoon. You are in human territorial space without permission. You have 30 standard minutes to reverse course and exit the Sol system. This is your only warning. Vorthak's expression shifted to what might have been amusement. You have 4,000 ships against our 2,000. Even if we believed they were functional, numbers alone don't win battles. Your crews are untested. Your tactics are non-existent. You are children playing with weapons you don't understand. 29 minutes, Yoon said calmly and closed the channel. On the Eternal Sentinel, Captain Eunji Nam reviewed her tactical displays with satisfaction. Her ship was positioned in the vanguard, alongside 12 other ancient dreadnoughts. Behind them, cruiser formations waited. Further back, the massive carrier vessels had already launched their fighter wings. All systems showing optimal performance, her engineering officer reported. It's remarkable, Captain. This ship has been in storage for 40,000 years, but every system responds like it was built yesterday. The archive did its job well, Nam nodded. She had spent the last 3 months training her crew of 500 on this ancient vessel. The learning curve had been steep, but the ship's systems were surprisingly intuitive. Ancient humanity had designed these vessels to be operated by humans, and despite the vast gulf of time, human hands still fit the controls perfectly. Weapons status? She asked. Main particle cannon charged to full capacity. Secondary batteries ready. Missile systems armed and tracking enemy vessels. Point defense grid online. Captain, we're ready for anything they can throw at us. Wing Commander Borishin sat in the cockpit of her fighter, one of 2,000 that had launched from the carrier Horizon's End. Her craft was a strange hybrid, an ancient fighter frame that had been upgraded with modern computing and life support systems. The combination gave her capabilities that no pure modern or pure ancient fighter could match. All wings report ready status, she transmitted to her squadron. Remember your training. Draxil fighters are fast but predictable. They favor head-on attacks because their culture sees evasive maneuvers as cowardly. Use that against them. Stay mobile, strike from unexpected angles, and don't give them the straight fight they want. Her squadron acknowledged. Shin had been flying for 15 years. But even she felt a thrill sitting in a cockpit designed by humans who had fought wars tens of thousands of years ago. The archive had included tactical data from ancient battles, and human pilots had spent months studying them. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's institutional military knowledge ran deeper than anyone suspected. The 30 minutes expired. Vorthak, as expected, did not retreat. Instead, the Draxil fleet accelerated into attack formation. They're coming, Yoon's tactical officer reported unnecessarily. Everyone on the bridge could see the enemy ships moving. Yoon gave a series of calm orders. All ships engage at will. Target priority. Disable when possible, destroy when necessary. Show them what ancient humanity learned about warfare. The space between the two fleets erupted with weapons fire. Draxil cruisers opened with their standard plasma torpedoes, weapons that had served them well for thousands of years. The ancient human ships responded with particle beams that cut through space at nearly light speed. The difference was immediately apparent. Draxil torpedoes, while powerful, traveled at sublight speeds and could be intercepted. Human particle beams arrived almost instantly. The first wave of Draxel ships found their shields overwhelmed in seconds. Modern shield technology, designed to disperse energy over time, couldn't handle the concentrated power of ancient weapons. 3 cruisers went dark immediately, their power systems fried by sustained particle beam fire. Captain Nam watched her tactical display with professional satisfaction. Target their command ships. The archive data suggests Draxel fleet coordination breaks down rapidly when leadership vessels are disabled. The Eternal Sentinel's main particle cannon fired, a beam of blue-white energy that crossed thousands of kilometers in an instant. It struck a Draxel command cruiser directly, penetrating shields and hull in a single shot. The enemy vessel went spinning off course, leaking atmosphere and debris. In space, Wing Commander Shin led her squadron through the chaos of battle. Draxel fighters, true to her prediction, came straight at them in aggressive attack runs. Shin's squadron scattered in 3 dimensions, using maneuvers that would have been considered dishonorable in Draxel military culture, but were devastatingly effective. Break right, she called to her wing. 3 Draxel fighters streaked past where her formation had been a second before. Now they were exposed, having committed to their attack vector. Shin's squadron looped back and hit them from behind and above, angles the Draxel hadn't expected. The ancient fighters proved their worth. Their targeting computers, upgraded with modern processing, locked onto enemy craft faster than pure modern systems could. Their weapons, designed for an era when fighter combat was faster and more brutal, hit harder than anything the Draxel had faced before. Within the first hour, it became clear that this was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The Draxel fleet, designed to overwhelm less advanced species through superior numbers and firepower, found itself completely outmatched. Ancient human weapons were simply better. Ancient human defensive systems absorbed damage that should have been crippling. And ancient human tactical doctrine, refined through wars that made modern conflicts look like skirmishes, allowed human commanders to predict and counter every Draxel move. On the Dominance, Supreme Commander Vorthak watched his fleet disintegrate around him. In 2 hours of combat, he had lost 800 ships. 800! The humans had lost fewer than 50, and most of those were damaged rather than destroyed. All ships retreat, he finally ordered, his pride shattered. Full reverse maximum speed. But Fleet Admiral Yoon had predicted this too. Human cruisers had already moved to cut off the most direct escape routes. The Draxel fleet found itself herded like animals, forced into a single direction away from human space. Yoon opened a channel to the fleeing Draxel flagship. Supreme Commander Vorthak, your ship is disabled but intact. We could have destroyed it. We chose not to. Take this message back to your High Arbiter. Humanity does not desire war, but we will not accept subjugation. Leave our space and do not return with hostile intent. The transmission ended. Human ships held their positions, allowing the battered Draxel fleet to limp away. Of 2,000 vessels that had entered human space, barely 800 were making it out. The rest were disabled, captured, or destroyed. On the Eternal Sentinel, Captain Nam looked around her bridge. Her crew had performed perfectly, operating an ancient warship as if they had trained on it for decades rather than months. Stand down from combat alert, she ordered. Damage report? Minor shield fluctuations, Captain. Nothing significant. The ship performed exactly as designed. After 40,000 years, it fought like it was brand new. Nam permitted herself a smile. Send a message to Fleet Admiral Yoon. The Eternal Sentinel reports mission accomplished. Ancient humanity would be proud. Throughout the human fleet, similar messages echoed. The test was over. The galaxy had seen what happened when modern arrogance met ancient experience. It would be a lesson they would not soon forget. 3 months had passed since the battle at Neptune's orbit. The Galactic Assembly Hall, once filled with species confident in their superior position, now hummed with a different kind of energy. Uncertainty, caution, and for many civilizations, the uncomfortable process of adjusting to a new reality. Ambassador Doyen Park walked through the corridors with a different reception than before. Where aliens had once looked at him, with dismissive amusement, they now nodded respectfully. Some even stepped aside to let him pass. The change was subtle but profound. The emergency session had been called to discuss the future of galactic relations in light of humanity's revelation. Every major species had sent their highest representatives. Even the Draxel had returned. though High Arbiter Velkan looked considerably less confident than he had 3 months earlier. Admiral Jiwon Kim stood at the back of the human delegation as usual, but her small smile had grown into something more satisfied. The galaxy had learned its lesson, though whether that lesson would lead to wisdom or resentment remained to be seen. The session began with a representative from the Pelvan Confederacy, a smaller species that had always maintained neutral positions in galactic politics. The Pelvan ambassadors stood, their translucent skin shifting colors as they spoke. Honored assembly, we gather to address an unprecedented situation. Humanity has revealed themselves to be far older and more powerful than we understood. This changes the fundamental power structure of known space. The question before us is simple. How do we proceed? Velkan rose, though his movements lacked their previous authority. The Draxel Empire acknowledges that we acted based on incomplete information. The battle at Neptune demonstrated that humanity possesses genuine military capability. However, this does not excuse their deception. 70 years of pretending to be primitive newcomers was a calculated manipulation. Park stood to respond, his voice calm but firm. The Draxel Empire is correct that we maintained deception, but let me be clear about why. When ancient humanity fled to Earth, they left instructions for their descendants. Those instructions said, hide until you understand the galaxy you've emerged into. Learn who can be trusted. Study potential threats. Only reveal yourselves when you're strong enough to survive the revelation. He gestured to the assembled species. We spent 70 years watching how this assembly treats species perceived as weak. We saw smaller civilizations pressured into unfavorable treaties. We observed military occupations justified as protection. We noticed that age of spaceflight was used as justification for exploitation. Frankly, what we saw convinced us our ancestors had been wise to hide. A Thane representative stood, their crystalline form reflecting the chamber lights. But surely humanity understands that their deception has damaged trust. How can we negotiate with a species that lies about their fundamental nature? Admiral Kim stepped forward now, joining Park at the speaking platform. Every species in this chamber keeps military secrets. The Thane Confederacy has weapons development programs you don't share with the Assembly. The Krell Empire maintains hidden defense installations. The Draxel military doctrine includes classified tactical strategies. Is humanity's secret any different, except in scale? The chamber fell silent as species recognized the truth in her words. Park continued. Humanity proposes a new framework for galactic relations. One based not on age or military power, but on mutual respect and honest cooperation. We have technologies from our ancestors that could benefit everyone. Medical advances, energy generation improvements, agricultural techniques. We're willing to share them, but not as tribute from a subjugated species, as equals trading with equals. On Earth, President Ha-Jun Song watched the assembly session through a live feed in his office. The president was younger than his predecessors, barely 50, but he carried the weight of deciding humanity's role in the galaxy. Beside him, Dr. Hee-jin Choi reviewed data from the archive. Mr. President, Dr. Choi said quietly, there's something you need to see. The archive has been monitoring long-range sensor networks. The old signals, the ones from humanity's ancient enemies, have changed. They're showing patterns of renewed activity. President Song felt a chill. How long do we have? Dr. Choi shook her head. Unknown. Could be decades. Could be years. The signals are coming from beyond the edge of known space. Regions where no current civilization has explored. But they're definitely there, and they're definitely getting stronger. Song looked back at the feed showing the assembly. Aliens were debating trade agreements and territorial boundaries, completely unaware of potential threats from the darkness beyond their borders. We need to unite them, he said. Whatever's out there, whatever drove ancient humanity into hiding, it won't care about galactic politics or which species has been in space the longest. Back at the assembly, the session continued for hours. Some species argued for sanctions against humanity for their deception. Others pushed for immediate military alliances to secure access to ancient technology. A few smaller civilizations simply asked for fair treatment, hoping humanity would be more reasonable than the traditional powers had been. Finally, Park made the proposal that would reshape galactic politics. Earth suggests the formation of a new organization, not replacing the assembly but supplementing it. A mutual defense network open to any species willing to contribute. We share defensive technologies and coordinate responses to external threats. Membership is voluntary, but those who join commit to protecting each other. Velkon's forearms gestured dismissively. The Draxel Empire has maintained galactic security for 12,000 years. We don't need human assistance. Admiral Kim fixed him with a steady gaze. High Arbiter, with respect, you don't know what's out there. Ancient humanity fought something powerful enough to nearly destroy our entire civilization. We fled rather than face extinction. Those enemies might still exist somewhere beyond known space. If they return, every species in this galaxy will need to stand together. The words sent a ripple of concern through the chamber. This was the first time humanity had mentioned why they had hidden in the first place. A representative from a small species called the Vreen stood nervously. Ambassador Park, if these ancient enemies are real, why reveal yourselves now? Wouldn't staying hidden be safer? Park smiled sadly. Because hiding forever isn't living. Our ancestors spent 40,000 years in darkness, so their descendants could walk in the light again. We won't dishonor their sacrifice by cowering when we've finally grown strong enough to stand openly. Over the following weeks, the new defense network took shape. 30 species joined in the first month, including several of the galaxy's major powers. The Draxel Empire notably refused, but many smaller civilizations saw it as an opportunity to gain security without subjugation. Captain Unji Nam received new orders. The Eternal Sentinel and 5 other ancient dreadnoughts would patrol the outer edges of known space, watching for any signs of unusual activity. It was a lonely assignment, far from the politics and celebrations near the galactic core, but Nam understood its importance. As she guided her ancient vessel into the darkness beyond the frontier, she thought about the humans who had built this ship 40,000 years ago. They had fled into hiding to save their species. Now their descendants sailed back into that same darkness, no longer running but standing guard. Wing Commander Borashin found herself training pilots from other species in the tactics humanity had inherited from ancient wars. The first mixed species squadron was awkward at first, different beings with different reflexes learning to work together. But gradually, they began to understand what ancient humanity had learned, that diversity in tactics and thinking made a fleet stronger, not weaker. Dr. Hyejin Choi continued her work with the archive, carefully revealing ancient technologies to the new defense network while keeping humanity's most powerful secrets secure. Some weapons were too dangerous to share, some knowledge was too devastating to release. The archive had taught her that ancient humanity's fall had come partly from sharing everything too freely with allies who became enemies. In a secure facility on Earth's moon, she reviewed files marked with the highest classification, systems that made the revealed warships look primitive, weapons that could shatter planets, technologies that bent physics in ways current science couldn't explain. These would remain secret, a final defense if ancient enemies truly returned. 1 year after the revelation, Ambassador Park and Admiral Kim stood together on an observation deck overlooking Earth. Below them, the planet turned peacefully, unaware of the careful balance their leaders maintained between revelation and secrecy, between cooperation and security. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Park asked, echoing his question from a year earlier. Kim watched as a transport ship lifted from Earth's surface, heading to join a joint patrol with Krell and Pelvin vessels. "We showed them enough to earn respect. We hid enough to stay safe. We offered friendship to those who wanted it, and demonstrated strength to those who needed to see it. Our ancestors would approve." "And if the old enemies come back?" Park asked quietly. Kim's expression hardened. "Then we'll do what ancient humanity should have done. We'll face them together, united with every species willing to stand against the darkness. And if we must fight, we'll fight with everything we have, including the weapons we haven't shown anyone yet." Far beyond the edge of known space, in a region where stars grew thin and darkness dominated, something ancient stirred. Fast machines dormant for 40,000 years slowly awakened. They had detected energy signatures, old patterns they recognized from wars fought in ages past. Human ships were in space again, no longer hiding. The hunters had found their prey once more. But this time humanity would not run. This time they stood with allies and ancient weapons, ready to defend not just themselves but an entire galaxy of species who had finally learned to see them as equals. The hunt was beginning again. But humanity had spent 40,000 years preparing for this moment, growing from frightened refugees into guardians of known space. Whatever came from the darkness would find not the scattered remnants of a broken empire, but a unified species backed by friends and armed with knowledge earned through millennia of survival. Admiral Kim turned away from the window and headed back to her office. There was work to do, fleets to coordinate, defenses to strengthen, and secrets to keep. The galaxy thought they had seen humanity's full strength. They were wrong. In the deepest archives, in files that perhaps 10 humans had ever accessed, lay the true final defense of humanity. Technologies that ancient humans had developed in their last desperate years. Weapons they had never used because they feared what they might unleash. Knowledge that could save a civilization or destroy it. Kim had seen these files. She knew what humanity was truly capable of. And she knew that revealing the ancient warships had been just the beginning of a much longer story. The galaxy had learned that humanity was old and powerful. Someday, if the darkness returned, they would learn just how powerful humanity could truly be. But that was a lesson for another day. For now, humanity stood revealed and respected, ancient and new, hiding in plain sight while they prepared for the wars that might still come. The story of humanity's return to the stars had begun, but the story of what they would become was still being written, one careful secret at a time.